Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first and last word poetry series. And I'm very excited about the readers tonight. So let's get started. Our first reader is Mary Bonina. She was a finalist for the Goldfarb Fellowship from Virginia Center for the Arts and awarded several residencies, including at the VCCA retreat Moulin in Auvillar, France. Her new poetry collection is Lunch in Chinatown from Cervena Barva Press, which published Living Proof, Clear IT, her memoir, My Father's Eyes, and will bring out her novel, My Way Home, in 2025. And I give you Mary.
I'm very happy to be a Cervena Barva Press author. I'm going to begin by reading a poem. As most of you know, my memoir was published by Cervena Barva Press. And so I've been thinking about my father because his birthday was election day. Something good about that day. And so I'm going to read a poem from Living Proof, which was the first chapbook that Gloria published for Cervena Barva. It's called A World. In memory of Biagio John Bonina. When the kitchen got too hot in summer, my father would stand at the screen door, looking out onto the deck and beyond, just as if he could still see. But he wasn't trying to fool anyone, not anymore. He wanted only to catch a breeze off the water. And on days when humidity took over and then a sudden storm came up, he would go out and stand beneath the overhang of the roof and listen, just listen to the world being defined in raindrops. Then he knew the limits of our physical world, not his own boundless mind, his way of being. Blind and in a storm, the wind and thunder gave our world a ceiling, invited him in. Hearing the wind and the rain coming down, it was all sketched out. There were real boats rocking in the water, sails flapping, music out on the deck when rain drummed on the metal railing and the wooden benches. Next dock over, surprised tourists in line at the ticket booth for harbor cruises would be screeching, not wanting to get wet. They'd run in his direction, take the ramp up to where he stood, and he'd let them into his restaurant through the kitchen door. He didn't go in right away himself, but stood listening to fishermen offloading their catch, working fast in the rain, tipping ice out of bags into coolers, packing lobster and cod. As he waited until the job was done, a truck was waiting too. He'd heard it beeping on the dock, backing up to the boat. He could have done without the engine idling. Not that it distracted or obscured, but rather it reminded him of what he had lost. So I've chosen, before I read from the new collection, Lunch in Chinatown, I'm going to read a couple of other poems that haven't been published. Well, one was published in a journal. It's not part of a collection. And the other is the newest poem I have. This one, I think, was published in Italian Americana. The photographer. She thinks I hold my head too high. Then, when I don't look up at her lens, tells me not to lower it so much. I fear being altered by a new position, a changing light. I think I know my own soul or spirit. When she points her camera at me, I want her to see something more than a scar or a streak of grief or worry running across my forehead. I frustrate the photographer who says, relax, has me change from blouse to sweater and back, coaches me to look serious, light, pretty, cute, fierce, poetic, professional. My clothing now is meant to earn respect. Once I was grateful just to have one pair of shoes, some soft shirts, a warm coat to keep out ferocious wind, icy rain. How carefully I chose those shoes and shirts and coat. How I took care not to wear them out too soon. I am in each frame captured, not whole, but in part. On the wall behind me, there is a shadow the photographer says she can remove. Okay. And I've been thinking about climate change a lot. And this poem called Water Lilies actually came from a newspaper article I'd read several years ago. And I had clipped it out and stuck it in one of my notebooks, and going through notebooks looking for things that might jog my memory and emotions that I might work on, I found this article, and this is the result of the poem, and it references the floods in the Sudan. Water lilies. The way they dry out here in winter on tall stalks, looking like lamps in the pond, at Great Meadows, and at Black's Nook, the preserve close to where I live. I saw last summer the water choked with them, thought ducks could catch webbed feet in the underwater tangle of roots growing like rope hair from the bulbs. It's the bulbs the women of South Sudan go after to feed their children. They grind seeds high in protein, make sludge barely palatable, and luckily not poison. And so it is that everything I used to know and love about water lilies begins to recede, though the floodwaters in Sudan did not, taking the fields used for farming. I read this somewhere, wondered how many people know this flooding led to famine, know that this is the way children survive now on water lilies, and the image I'd had of them fading now, a different beauty, less vivid than what I've learned of these strong women, lilies themselves, equal to Monet's at the Tuileries in Paris, or those I've seen when driving in the country, pink, white, yellow, flashing in my peripheral vision in ponds on farmlands off the roadside. And this new realization, stronger too than cold winter walks under a pewter sky, when I risked falling into a not quite frozen pond, hoping to reach the stalks of dried up lilies, not for sustenance for my children, only to take home for the tall floor vase. And the lily women are more beautiful too than the wealth of lilies choking Black's Nook in summer. I forget all about those other water lilies. Now I remember water lilies only as women who feed themselves to their children, the women of South Sudan. So I thought that was a good lead into reading from Lunch in Chinatown, since these poems are about people who are refugees from all kinds of situations and immigrants. Lunch in Chinatown came out of my experience of teaching the English language to people in their workplaces at New England Medical Center and Bank of Boston, Mount Auburn Hospital, a couple of other places where I had a private contract through HR to do classes. And they spoke some 16 different languages, and it became really a survival skills course. was trying to be diligent about having, a good lesson plan, as I learned I needed to when I taught anything. And I realized very quickly that the students in the classes, these adults, were people needing words that were going to help them survive in their new culture, their new lives, at their workplace especially. And so I'm going to read a series of poems. I won't read the whole book. It's a chapbook, so there aren't that many poems in the book. Hopefully it feels substantial nevertheless. I'm going to start with the title poem, Lunch in Chinatown. And one of the things I should say is there were many of the people in these classes, most of them had service jobs at the hospital, cashier, phlebotomist, messenger, all kind, maintenance. Most of them, though, or a lot of them anyway, I can't say most of them, I'm not sure, but there were a lot of them who had professional jobs in the countries they came from. But because they didn't have the language, they couldn't resume working in those fields. And so, they felt like they never probably would again. In my conversations with them, they said, my children, I'm here and my children will do that work. So Lunch in Chinatown. The day after Christmas, the sidewalks were slippery with snow and ice. Wei Wei took my arm as we started across Nealon Street to Tyler for dim sum. At first, I didn't know why she would hold on, not until I looked down, making sure my feet were on safe ground, and I saw she wore bright yellow summer shoes, like ballet flats, but with hard soles. The air was bitter cold, smoky and scented with ginger and sesame flavored noodles were what we ordered, both of us pointing to the same thing on the menu, the number 12 translated into English for me. And we laughed at what we had in common. Certainly language wasn't it. I knew nothing about Wei Wei then, not even that she had worked as a doctor at China's largest hospital. I only knew she didn't like the cold, that she was afraid of falling, and that she wanted to learn English very much. So some lessons. Lessons for me, there were lessons for me, not just for the students in the classes. And this poem is a perfect example of how they were lessons for me also, not just about their lives, but about what I didn't know about my life. A favorite question. One day in class, Mei Jing asked me about her Boston address. She struggled, her brow wrinkled, and she told me she lives on St. Botolph Street. She wanted to know why. So I asked, don't you like where you live? I missed the point so she did what I do when I'm not being understood. Got up from her seat, went to the easel, made a diagram, used a lot of drama, and underlined the abbreviations for Saint and Street, asking again, why? She wanted me to know that I had missed the obvious. It was the plain and simple fact that Saint and Street share the same abbreviation. I must say I had never considered that, but clearly Mei Jing was shocked. A saint is like the Buddha, yes? I knew nothing about the saint, but Mei Jing was arguing Botolph's case, upset about reverence denied, which must be deserved for him to have been given such a title. It upset her greatly to bring a saint down to street level. And then I remembered reading of the thousands of the faithful who flock every week to Chiang Mai Temple, bearing gifts for the Buddha, prostrating themselves before the statue's feet, offering money, jasmine garlands, praying, and making their petitions known. we had a lot of fun in these classes. There's one of the poems in here. It's about it's called Examples. And, a word would come up and I'd have to try to help them understand, it wasn't something that was a common thing, like an abstract idea, like the word philosophy. And so that was always a challenge. But this is called Examples. But there's another thing that happens in this poem about people having these sort of complex personalities, in the sense of, they might know the word philosophy, but they might know the name of a wrestler also. Examples. Pressed to explain the word philosophy on page 38 in the English practice book, Andre, a Haitian, helps me out. Descartes, he asks, he knows, can explain to the others who speak French. Then all I have left to do is find a way to help the Chinese understand. First, I try Lao Tzu, then I try Confucius. Yes, Confucius. Confucius works for them all. 2. On another day, I asked, have you ever met a famous person? Felix from Guatemala says he once met B.B. King. Ethiopian Hagos says he met the governor. And Andre says, I met Superfly Snuka. Superfly Snuka? A wrestler, Andre says, explaining, I saw him on Nealon Street buying a lottery ticket the day before his match at Boston Garden. He shook my hand. So that's... So I was always being reminded of the lives of these people in my classes, what their lives were before they actually came here. And this, I hope that that more people will read these poems. A lot of people are reading them. I'm very happy about that. And I hope more people do, because I feel like it can be an antidote to the vitriol that's being expressed, and we're going to hear a lot more of it. And there's going to be a lot of horrible, awful things that happen in relation to immigration. And things are already gearing up. And so I'm glad I published these poems now. They've been sitting in a drawer for a while. They've been individually published in journals, many of them, but okay, teaching the past tense. Let's talk only about the past today. Where were you born? They begin talking all at once, saying the names of the countries they came from. Haiti, Guatemala, Ethiopia, China. From knitting together, remembering how she found her way out, left Central America, came to Boston after she lived for a time in New Orleans. And Andre shudders, unable to forget Haiti, the Duvaliers, the earthquake. The Chinese women in class used to have very traditional names. Here, they were given American names. Nancy, Jenny, and Carlene, who says an Irish man, someone her father knew, named her. Hagos, the Ethiopian, says, not somberly, just matter-of-factly, my country, lot of people dead. That often happened that, we could be having some discussion, and sometimes it would be light, or sometimes it would be just kind of even. And then someone would say something like Hagos said at the end of that conversation. A couple, more of the past. This is kind of a prose poem, I guess you would call it. How did you meet your wife? I asked Andre, the younger of the two Haitian men in class. Past tense was the lesson today. The history of love and marriage seemed as good a subject for practice as any. I had called on Andre because I was certain he had a wife. I didn't know yet about the others, but Andre's wife, Giselle, was in my beginner's class, still learning the present tense of the verb to be. How did I meet my wife? My wife, I see her on the street. You see her? I ask. He struggles, then corrects himself, begins to speak more carefully. I saw her, he says. Then he hesitates, shrugs, just as he always does, whenever he knows he's going to make a mistake. She likes to go to the movies, so afternoons, 2:00, we go to the movies. Late in the day, the sun streams in on this wing of the hospital building where class is held for hospital employees. Past tense, I coach. I know they have no time or money to go to the movies now. Although it is my rule to correct my students, I enjoy Andre telling his story just as if he were now, at this time in his life, meeting his wife, as if telling me, one of his friends, what is new with him. He puts me on that bright street brimming with activity in Port-au-Prince. I can see Giselle, a young girl with her friends all standing around her. They don't giggle. They feign aloofness. And Andre approaches the group as he approaches his English class, shyly and respectfully. Everyone in the makeshift classroom smiles. Who knows what this room is generally used for? Occupational therapy, a place for seminars, family conferences. This moment, though, the room is reserved for Andre's story. Okay, just a few more here. Where's that? Composition. Anna's first job in the US. She took care of old women sick with pneumonia on a back ward at City Hospital. For meals, they got broth that had the look and aroma of nothing. Her job was to make them swallow it. Then she marked the chart, called it eating. If they were able, she could take them down the long corridor to the solarium. She knew how not to look into the rooms as they passed by. She tried not to hear them moaning and calling to her the others, the ones she was not supposed to feed. She didn't get better assignments, delivering get-well cards and letters, Lindor chocolate assortments, or roses and fern in milk glass vases, and those dish gardens, the ones that went home with those who recovered, succulents that would live forever. She was just married then. She kept her wedding ring in the pocket of her coat, in the locker down in the basement near the morgue. The rule was no jewelry if you worked on a ward. She noticed sometimes when she lifted the spoon to a dying woman's lips without that ring on her finger, her hand felt too light, made her think that she wasn't in the world anymore. The time. Okay, I'm going to read one last poem called Savant at Whole Foods. This one doesn't, there are a couple in here that don't take place in the classroom. They take place on a train or on the street. This one takes place at Whole Foods. Savant at Whole Foods. At the supermarket express checkout, my 2 items on the counter: a carton of milk, some tomatillos. On the tomatillos, no label. The cashier needs a code to calculate cost. I say, tomatillos. She shakes her head, calls out to a clerk passing by, holds up the eco-plastic bag of fruit. She asks for the code. What number? The man recites the number. He says, just as I have, tomatillos. Then the price appears on the cashier's screen. I want to know if the man knows the code for every item sold in store. And he says he does, really. And because I'm impressed, he wants me to know how much more he knows. For instance, coffee. The store sells 12 kinds fresh ground. He can identify each one by its aroma. A whiff of hara from the Ethiopian highlands is not the same as Arabian mocha, grown in the mountains of Yemen. He distinguishes Indonesian varieties, Sumatra, Java, Sulawesi, catches the scent of Guatemalan Antigua volcanic, and from Costa Rica, Margarita and Cashier. The man knows also this fruit I'm buying, these small green globes have existed before humans ever did. Fossils found 50 million years before, and he knows the Aztecs named the fruit. That's it for now. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's have a nice warm round of applause from Mary Bonina.
Oh, I'll come back for that. Thank you.
Okay. Now I can go away.
Okay.
Okay. Next up, we have Mark Pawlak. He is the author of 10 collections, most recently Away by Arrowsmith Press in 2024. He has edited 6 anthologies, has been translated into Polish, German, Japanese, and Spanish. I wonder if he can read his poetry in those languages. His work has appeared in the Best American Poetry, Blood to Remember, American Poets on the Holocaust, New American Writing, The World, Poetry South, just to name a few. His memoir, My Diniversity, Knowing Denise Levertov, was published by Madhat Press. He's co-editor of Hanging Loose Press, and I give you Mark Pawlak.
Thank you. Thanks, Gloria. Thanks, Harris. And thank you, everybody, for showing up here. I'm using, so we're sharing Mary's laptop here. And appropriately, it's, to make it the right height, Mary has stacked up copies of the complete poems of Denise Levertov, 900 pages long. Wow. And the correspondence of Denise Levertov and Robert Duncan, which is, I think, 700 pages long. An appropriate foundation for our poetry, since we were both students of Denise's at one point. So I like that coincidence there. So I'm going to read, I think I just read mostly from my new collection, and then a couple of new poems at the end. So it's called Away. Let's see it, Away, Away. So that means it's very far away. So there's a lot of sense of travel in these poems by car, bicycle, foot, train. Most of the poems were written during the COVID, and many of them were written during the first Trump administration, some more recent. So the sense of away means very far away. And I'll start with the title, 2 selections from the title poem, which is in 7 parts. I'll just read 2 of them. It's titled Away, and it's about traveling, the place that Mary and I vacation every summer on the coast of Maine at the Canadian border and the Bay of Fundy. So people say, oh, is that like near Bar Harbor? I said, well, when you get to Bar Harbor, head north on Route 1 in 3 more hours and you'll be there. So it's quite far away. And I'm sure, I know there's been a lot of discussion of people depressed about the election, about escaping to Canada. So this is right at the Canadian border, literally. We spend many a day just crossing the local bridge onto Campobello Island in New Brunswick. So I'll read two poems. The first poem from Away, and the 6th poem from the sequence. And the first one begins with, it's titled and begins with an epigraph, On the Road Again, and I had in mind the song, and particularly the Willie Nelson version of the song, which I often listen to while we're driving to Lubec, Maine, away, on the road again. And I'm of an age where my eyesight is such that I can no longer read the type in my own book. So I've printed all my poems out in 16-point type. So I'm reading from the TypeScript. Away. Coastal Route 1 north of Ellsworth. Willie Nelson on the radio. Going places that I've never been. Seeing things I may never see again. Tree-lined slalom run, stretching all the way to the vanishing point. That narrows to a hiccupy, frost-heaved two-lane, its asphalt shoulders calving. Cresting one hill, pooled fog. Cresting another, quicksilver mirage washouts. Sun-baked quill cakes the crows peck at line roadsides. Massed reeds crowd runoff ditches, threatening invasion. Eight-wheelers downshifting, stacks burping, leave tire-peeled detritus, burnt rubber graffiti. In field after field, long-abandoned sheds, dilapidated barns, their roofs caved. 1 minute, beaded paw prints clamber up the window sill. The next, taillights beckon through ground fog. Mile marker after mile marker ticked off until your mind resembles a creased road map that once spread out refuses to fold neatly back up. And I can't wait to get back on the road again. And this is another part, part 6, titled Itinerary. Seeking a taste of wilderness along a rock-bound coast, eager to explore woodland trails meandering through upland stands of fir, I know just the place. If raised grasslands punctuated by peat bogs are what you had in mind, with elder, meadowsweet, and flat-topped asters amid the blue joint, I can show you where. Do wing-flagged spruces along dizzying overlooks top your must-see list, where seabirds nest beneath headland bluffs perpetually damp from sea mist and fog? Let me take you there. If pocket coves and cobble beaches are your preference, with basking seals on half-tide ledges and porpoises cavorting among sea swells, I know just the place. Breaching humpbacks, spouting mink and right whales frequent the offshore channel there. Itching to train your birding glasses on bay-breasted warblers, keen on adding boreal chickadees, yellow-bellied flycatchers, golden-crowned kinglets, and brown creepers to your life list? I know just the place. Let me take you there. This next poem is a found poem. Harris knows I like to write a lot of found poems. We had a funny situation where we had a rental that ended one day, and then the next rental in the same area was a day delayed. So we had no place to stay for one night. And a friend of ours who lives on Campobello Island let us stay at her house. She was away, and so we did that. And I pulled out of her bookshelf a book. I like to peruse other people's bookshelves. And the book was titled Favorite Recipes from Old New Brunswick Kitchens. And so it literally had recipes from New Brunswick in the late 19th and early 20th century. And at the bottom of each recipe, there was an excerpt, probably, I guess they were from newspapers of the time, and they were kind of like bits of advice. And they really caught my attention, and they were on various topics, but there was one theme that really drew me in, and it led to me extracting them and writing this poem. So it's called Backwoods and Maritime Beauty Tips. So think of the late 19th century. 1, A genteel lady will wish to rid herself of unsightly freckles, her complexion having been aggravated by exposure to the sun. Some ladies vouch for the beneficial results of cow urine rubbed on the face. Excellent, too, is lettuce cream. 2 cups of young lettuce cut fine, washed and stirred into a cup of boiled mutton suet. 2. To remove tan and whiten the lady's face, add 1/2 pint rainwater, 1 small cup real cider vinegar, 1 cupful milk, mix and bottle, apply to the face before bedtime, wash off in the morning with warm water. 3. Into 1 quart, infuse 4 ounces butternut hulls. Add 1/4 ounce copperas. Apply with a hairbrush 2 or 3 times weekly. You will get brown or black tinting in keeping with the strength of the decoction. Use strong cold tea or coffee every day to achieve noticeably darker and softer hair. 4. To thicken the eyebrows as refined ladies desire, brush a few drops of oil of cajeput on every night. To deepen color, use a burnt match or a needlepoint smoked in a lamp. 5. Combine 1/2 ounce liquor of potash, 1 ounce eau de cologne, and 2 ounces of good brandy. Rub in with a coarse towel morning and evening. Removes those unsightly black pimples. 6. Good results in smoothing out wrinkles have been obtained with this mixture. 2 ounces unsalted butter and 1 drachm each as essence of turpentine and powdered gum mastic. Rub into face before retiring. Remove in the morning with warm water and soap. 7. An excellent tonic for oily skin is the strained juice of a pureed cucumber. To this add 1 teaspoon white wine and 1 teaspoon witch hazel. Keep cold, put on face with cotton ball. 8. Cover a wart with a small piece of raw beef steeped all the previous night in vinegar. Tie it on. Should wart be on forehead, fasten beef with strips of sticking plaster. Remove in the day. Put back on every night. The wart will die and peel off after 1 fortnight. So, I pass on those tips. This poem is titled Marx Said, and the title is the first line of the poem is Karl Marx I'm referring to. Marx said, all that is solid melts into air. All that is sacred is profaned. Meaning old neighborhoods suffer decline or utter change. Save more discount liquors, gone. Advertised wine for Mother's Day. You drove her to it. But some things remain. The after-hour diners, the street corner watering holes. Hurricane Betty's landmark strip club still offers nude dancing, although its signage has been updated, changing the world 1 lap dance at a time. This next poem I wrote and dedicated to my granddaughter, who is now a toddler. I was anticipating her birth, and she was scheduled to be born, although she didn't quite make it, around my own birthday, and I was thinking of the sense of the world she would be inheriting, inhabiting, compared to that which I lived in as a child. So it's called Birthday, and it has an epigraph from J.P. Hartley's The Go-Between, a novel. The epigraph is, "The past is another country. This day next year, I will have lived 3/4 of a century. I remember my babcha, Saturday shopping trips to the Polish market. She points to a chicken in the cage, and the man in the blood-stained apron grabs the squawking hen, disappears out back, returns to hand her the still warm plucked bird wrapped in butcher paper, Sunday's dinner. Sing-song calls announce rag pickers and knife sharpeners with push carts. Sauerkraut and pickles ferment in basement tubs. Pitted peaches swim in sealed ball jars. Spinach, peas, and spaghetti come in a can. Dessert is lime green jello mold studded with fruit and jiggling on a plate. Mom hems pants, darns socks. Dad shears hair. I wear hand-me-downs from cousins. Weddings, birthdays, and first communions are black and white images with scalloped borders created by a camera. Square box covered with faux leather. Clunky black Bakelite telephones. Circular dials. Area codes, forget it. Inside a lacquered wooden console powered by vacuum tubes with glowing filaments, there's a small tinted window. Greg, Chuck, and I peer through it to watch Howdy Doody, Captain Kangaroo, and Kukla Fran, and of course Ollie. Roller skates? 4 wheels with ball bearings strapped onto our shoes. Or nailed to the bottom of wooden crates, they do double duty as scooters. 1-speed bicycles have balloon tires. Want to stop? Backpedal with a firm, swift stroke. City of Buffalo borderlands are chest-high grass and brush fields with flourishing crabapple trees where we scare up pheasants, snare rabbits, and barehanded capture turtles and grasshoppers. Hot summer afternoons, we cool off in deep ponds and meandering creeks, or jigger for bullheads in the shade of elms. Where have we been all day? Mom doesn't ask. We don't say. Dads keep their tools in war surplus ammo boxes. Artillery shell casings serve as umbrella stands. They savor local beers, Genesee, Iroquois, Utica Club, Carling's Black Label, from tall ceramic steins or thick glass mugs. Our dad chills his Schuper in the kitchen fridge. They drive secondhand Chevys or Fords. Our dad always has his head under the hood to keep our winged Fairlane running. And I'll read one poem that so there's a whole sequence of poems in the book about the pandemic. This is a poem I wrote right at the very beginning, the first spring of the pandemic. Pandemic days. Cloud of white blossoms fills my front window. Curbside ornamental pear tree. Out back, my cherry graft, cascading umbra of tendrils tied with delicate white bows. Next door, the magnolia offers magenta-edged petals by the fistful. And every neighborhood street's festooned. Apple blossoms, apple blossoms, apple blossoms. But grand prize belongs to the purple plum, next block over, more precious for the brevity of its flowering. It takes my breath away. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, human life, its fragility, flowering of the sick, bedridden, the dying, intubated, the dead. I don't know about you, but my relationship to spring has been severely altered due to the pandemic. And I think our lives have been dramatically changed as a result of it. I think there was a Globe article this morning addressing that very topic. So I'm going to read a couple of new poems that are not in the book. My grandfather's one came from Krakow and the other from Lvov. They were both Polish, the ethnic Poles, so I've had a deep abiding interest in Europe and Eastern Europe and Poland and Ukraine, the borderlands there, which Timothy Snyder in his book called the Bloodlands, that those shifting borders between Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, etc., where during the 20th century, between Stalin and Hitler, 13 million people died, and so we see, kind of a repeat of that going on right now in Ukraine. And so I've been really somewhat obsessed by what's going on in Ukraine and fearful of what's to come given the new Trump administration. So I'll read 4 poems from a sequence of poems I've been writing about Ukraine. The first one is titled Erasure. So it plays on the idea of the poetic approach to erasure poetry. And it has an epigraph from Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, on February 24th, which is the day of the invasion. The word never was erased. Erasure. After the last war, the words never again were on the lips of survivors, were painted in black letters on the brick facades of new construction rising from the rubble. Never again. But when artillery shells and missiles demolish buildings, they create by erasure. As this new war demonstrates, a new slogan on brick facades and survivors' lips. Again. This poem is titled Kharkiv. It's titled Domicile, and it's from the Kharkiv region from 2024. Table and chairs, sofa, ottoman, mattress, wardrobe, bureau, family photos, garish wallpaper, ceiling, 4 walls. Table, smashed. Chairs, snapped matchsticks. Sofa, ottoman, mattress, smoldering. Wardrobe, disemboweled. Bureau, toppled. Wallpaper, shrapnel-pocked. Ceiling, gaping. 4th wall, sheared away. Stage set for tragedy awaiting playwright. Title, Domicile. Enter woman in babushka with broom, sweeps wood splinters, crockery fragments, glass shards, masonry chips into neat piles. She bends to see smiling faces, charred photos. Duty. It's got an epigraph from Keith Wilson. It's grave registry. The bodies are all buried now or rotted where they lay. Duty. And it's got quotes from the character in this poem. He ventures into battlefields, moonless nights, rainy days, fog shrouds. He ventures into battlefields to retrieve bodies. Well, we must remember that even the dead have rights. Enemy soldiers covered with frost. Enemy soldiers in fields pocked with craters. Enemy soldiers sprawled on blasted tanks. Stinking corpses stacked up in trenches. Those in winter uniform top of the pile. Those in summer camo underneath. Well, it is important for me to bring them all home, even his enemies. No Christmas truce this war. No hugs exchanged in fellowship. No brandy traded for schnapps. Here the transactions are in corpses, their countrymen for his. Solace for grieving mothers, solace for weeping wives. We are all human, and we must remain human. Thank you.
Let's give another round of applause for the wonderful poetry of Mark Pawlak.
Fabulous, Mark. So good. Thank you. Good poems.
What was that? Anyway, okay, so moving to our third featured poet. Ellen Steinbaum is the author of 5 poetry collections and a one-person play. The work has been nominated twice for the Pushcart Prize and appears in several anthologies, including Garrison Keillor's Good Poems, American Places, and The Widow's Handbook, an award-winning journalist and former Boston Globe columnist. She writes a blog, Reading and Writing, and The Occasional Recipe, which can be found on her website, ellensteinbaum.com. I give you Ellen Steinbaum.
Thank you, Harris and Gloria, and thank you, Mary and Mark, for the pleasure of hearing you and sharing this evening, and thank you all for being here. As I said, I was saying when I told people about this reading, it'll be better than what you were watching last Tuesday, and I'm feeling fragile and convalescent, and I picked out what I could bear to read, and I hope that you feel that it's gentle and can kind of be a little comforting. This is from my new book. I'm so excited about this cover, and it's just really cool. This is called Belonging. The second time I saw the mouse, I was merely startled as it skittered across the floor and disappeared behind a chair, hurrying as if it had entered our house by accident and was sorry for intruding. It was tiny, round, a wind-up toy mouse, a Beatrix Potter mouse, like a pet I didn't know I had. We bought a gadget that emits a sound we can't hear, designed to persuade our mouse to self-deport. Our mouse. Not like when I saw the shockingly large hole in the garden, the pile of excavated dirt beside it, and could not summon slaughter fast enough at just the thought of the large, dark body, horrifying tail. Instinct is quick to order, assign rank, rat or squirrel, caterpillar, worm, graceful dragonfly on painted melon, or scuttling roach in kitchen cabinet. We tolerate or banish what charms and what disgusts, what trespasses, what is allowed to build a fence around its space, and name it home. This is called Have We Forgotten, and it is a golden shovel poem, which means that this is a form that was invented by the poet Terence Hayes, mostly in homage to Gwendolyn Brooks, but it can be taken from anyone's writing. And the idea behind a golden shovel is that the last line of each, the last word of each line is from someone else's poem. And this is from a Gwendolyn Brooks poem, and I will read you the last lines, the final words of each line. We are each other's harvest. We are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. That's her poem, and this is mine. Have we forgotten? Have we forgotten that we inhabit this world together, are breathing the same air, are each occupying the inches of others' spaces, and must reap our harvest together. We can see that we are tillers of the same earth, are watching for the same rain, each walking the rows, each other's tools in our hands. Our business the same, our work what we must do together if we are to survive. We examine each offered gift, ours and others, humbled by the magnitude of what is before us and must be our mutual bond. And this is from a moment in time that feels so far away, and I was really shocked to realize how not that distant in history it really is. When baby Jessica fell down the well, remember when baby Jessica fell down the well? When baby Jessica fell down the well, the whole country stopped and held its breath, prayed for rescue that took 56 hours while Jessica sang about Winnie the Pooh. Do you remember this? She was 18 months old and it was 1987, and everyone wished they could help. Everyone watched. Everyone waited. And here is another golden shovel poem called Preamble, and it's the preamble to the Constitution. The dream is this, that we, living in this land with the interweavings of its varied people, seeking a way for the good of us all, for what can lift us to the place where we see how united we are, where each of us states, unafraid, what we believe and must do in order to create, must do to create an order that welcomes all our voices to ring out, and where we see the form our chorus takes when we can sing a song together, voices lifted ever more strongly, and though not perfect, harmonizing in a vision of union. And I'm going to read poems from my other books. This is from Afterwards, which was my first. This is called Grace. Blessed be the minutes, blessed the breath, and blessed be our small, frail humanness, myopic, hard of hearing. Grant us peace for words unsaid, what we did and left undone. We were only who we were. This is the title poem from my book, Brightness Falls. When the Red Line train rises out of the tunnel just past Kendall Square, crosses the Longfellow Bridge, sunlight glinting off the Charles and the hammered gold State House dome, a few riders look up, notice the way in The Hour of Cow Dust, the painting small, unfinished, easy to miss along the Museum of Fine Arts corridor on the way to special exhibitions in Islamic arts. The procession down from the Punjab hills brings blue-washed cows back to their calves and tired herders to their wives in peaceful winding down, late night, late sun catching each mote to fill the air with languid radiance in what is sometimes called grace. So I notice I had 2 mentions of grace. I must be needing some grace. This is a tiny little poem called One More Small Prayer of Healing from my book, This Next Tenderness. Like all who went before us, we bear the human burden, flesh that crumbles, spirit that bends. Comfort us as you comforted them. Be tender with us, wrap us in light, teach us to praise our lives. And I'm going to end with a poem that I very often end readings with. I was asked to write a poem for the wedding of my daughter Deborah and my son-in-law Mike, and now I will read it for you. I've always thought this was sort of what I wished for them, but also what I wished for us all. And so I, as I said, have very often ended a reading with it. But tonight I am ending my part of the reading with it because I want to wish Deborah and Mike a happy 25th anniversary. It's been a while since I wrote this poem. Now begins the dailiness. More days, if we are lucky, than we will think to count, piling up like shelter at our door. Feathered twigs and bits of string will weave day upon day, and we will lean unthinking on this solidness, rest within the wonder of this gift. Thank you.